It is great to be here. Um, we're going to have some good conversations. There's nothing easier than fixing other people's problems. So I'm a well of go try this, kind of. But we're at a moment today in our country that the left and the right sees clearly and does not disagree on. Pew Research says that 98% of Americans, now think about that, 98% say that incivility is a threat to this country. 67% say we've reached crisis levels of incivility. 48% say I no longer talk about politics, religion, or things like that with family members. We're losing the ability to talk to each other precisely when we need to talk about issues that are really threatening the very fabric of our republic. Now, what's interesting about this is pop culture has picked this up as well. It's not just academics studying this. When Sunday Night Live gets wind of it, you know it's an issue. So they're about to have a dinner, and somebody says, hey, let's get past dinner conversation. Can we talk about what we just heard in the news, which was a very famous comedian being accused of sexual assault? Can we, as adults, do this? So let's actually watch the first clip. There we go. So that would be really funny if it weren't so true. If this really wasn't just a preview of what's happening. Since the 2016 presidential election, nearly a third of people report they have stopped talking to a friend or family member due to political disagreements. Nearly 2/3 of Americans say they stay quiet about their political beliefs due to fear of offending coworkers or managers, resulting in losing their job. One of my best friend's wife just got let go by Starbucks for offending a trans worker. In a comprehensive survey of college students, an alarmingly large number of students believe it is acceptable to act, including resorting to violence, to shut down expression of opinions they consider offensive. 98% of Americans feel incivility is a major threat to our national unity. So we are at a moment. The question I think we need to ask ourselves as Christian communicators, do we bring anything different to the table? Like when we do conflict, when we talk about hard things, what is distinctly Christian about us? I think we're wrestling with that. Everything I'm about to say today, not everybody would agree with. Even at Biola University, not everybody would agree with what I'm about to say. I think people think we need to have a presence in the world, but how do you do that? How do you manage these different kind of conversations? We're going to skip this. We're going to skip it for now because you just saw it yesterday. If you saw President Zelensky and President Trump have that conversation in front of the nation, you've seen the argument culture, right? How many of you saw it? Okay, what did you notice real quick? What did you notice communication style wise, not the points being made? Go ahead and just raise your hand. And, yeah. Oh, body language right off the bat. Yes, and Zelensky being even critiqued for his body language, his apparel, President Trump took offense at. Yes? Anybody else? Yes. Yeah, loud and talking over each other, like not pausing whatsoever. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah, JD Vance was not the peacemaker when he stepped in. He stepped in hard and fast and said, you could at least say thank you, right, for everything that we've done. Yes. Right. Yes, and it was all being mediated. It was a hard day for civil communication in the United States. So we've been at this for 6 years, the Winsome Conviction Project. We've made a ton of mistakes. The mistakes have been spectacular, but we have looked back and said, okay, what was happening when things seemingly went well? We had productive conversations within a church. One of our biggest clients is Cru, Campus Crusade for Christ. We've worked within corporations. Churches are splitting over everything. Mask mandates, critical race theory, fog machines. Should fog machines be used in the modern worship service? Because now we turned worship into a concert. And this is no longer, and the church was ready to split. Blue Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. So we've seen some conversations go really well. We've seen others not go well. We've gone to Washington, D.C. 2 years in a row. We do it just to stay humble, just to stay humble, because nobody listens to us in DC. No one. Thank goodness for Crew, Christian Embassy. Thank goodness for a group called Faith and Law. Michael Ware's great group in DC, Christianity and the Public Good. So we were with high-ranking officials, and we thought it'd be brilliant to take a page out of G.K. Chesterton, right? Chesterton debated all the humanists of his day, H.G. Wells, Rudyard Kipling, but then they would go to the pub afterwards and continue the conversation. We thought, well, this is great. So we suggested it to this group. I'll never forget what one high-ranking official said: grab drinks. We don't even share the same elevators. So if we're expecting help to come from Washington, D.C., it is not coming from Washington, D.C. And they kind of looked at us like a little bit. One guy used the analogy, and you love it when he begins by saying, no offense taken. No offense. He goes, you guys are like, this is Vietnam, and the West Point guys just came, right? We're slugging it out day in and day out, and the West Point guys come, and it's like, oh, speak truth in love, turn the other cheek. That doesn't work when it's trench warfare. And we're like, yeah, but are those biblical calls optional? That's an interesting question. Boy, that reaction I just got right there, that is 5 times more I got on Capitol Hill. Thank you for the we did not get on Capitol Hill. Okay, so all right, so what's going on that makes something successful, and then when we can see it go sideways? Well, here's our epiphany that I want to share for you. Now, this works, I think, in group context. For the very first time in the history of the Mormon Church, the LDS Church is sending 30 students to Biola University, Westmont, and Azusa to engage evangelical Christians. It was signed off on by the president of Brigham Young University, who was at Biola's campus 2 weeks ago, along with Elder Clark, who's in charge of all education for LDS in the world. And we asked them, let's engage. And they did. They're coming at the end of March. So I think what we're going to say is we'll work in a group context, but I think this particularly works well in a personal communication. We have discovered that every one conversation is 3 conversations. You cannot skip any of them. So basically, there is what we call the pre-conversation. This is the internal dialogue you have with yourself. These are the powerful emotions that are surfacing when you're thinking about talking to a colleague, a student, a TA, an administrator. Those powerful emotions are residing there, and we'll take a look in a second. They're bleeding out into the conversation. We can't stop that bleeding. We'll look at that in a second. Then we actually have the actual conversation. This is incredibly important, right? This is what Harvard Negotiation Project does exceedingly well, is how do I actually organize a conversation so it doesn't go sideways? We have our own way of doing it, heavily influenced by Harvard Negotiation Project. And then we have the post-conversation. This one shocked us, but it's for real. So President Corey wants faculty at Biola to talk to each other. Like, let's not hide our differences, because we are very different when it comes to how we should have voted in the presidential election and things like that. So we did it, me and my co-director, Dr. Rick Langer, and the place was packed. I mean, the president's there, the provost is, board members are there, and it goes so well. I literally had the thought as I'm sitting there, how do you get nominated for the Nobel Prize, right? Does it come in an email? Do you get a text? It went that well. Literally 10 days later, we get an email from both of them saying that night did not go well. It was bad for the students to see that. You favored one person over another. I felt manipulated. And we're like, what just happened? So we met with the 2 individuals. Here's what happened. They went to their in-groups afterwards, and they got deprogrammed. By the way, many of those people in the in-group did not even attend the event. They just said, oh, no, remember, the other side is this. And they're like, oh, okay, what was I thinking? So we could have a great middle conversation. If we do not deal with our in-groups, we're not moving the needle 1 inch. You'll get deep. So if on Capitol Hill, there's a working group of 25 Democrats and Republicans that get sneered at a little bit. if you don't deal with your in-group, you're not going to trade your in-group for finding common ground on critical race theory with another faculty member. The in-group is just too important. Our kids play together. We're colleagues. We get grants together. You're not swapping out that in-group for making common ground with a person from a diverse perspective. But we have to deal with that third group. Okay, let's talk about the pre-conversation. The heart is mentioned 500 times in scripture. The heart determines the course of your life. Jesus obviously believes strongly in what the heart does in the communication process. What you say flows from what's in your heart. So we've got to deal with the heart. If you walk into a conversation and you just have a modicum of civility, like I know I'm not going to cut the person off, I'm not going to call them names, but I do not like this person. I certainly don't respect this person. And I suspect our church would be much better off if you weren't part of this church. On our podcast, the Winsome Conviction podcast, I have some cards over there by some books I just brought if you're interested, and How Hurtful if you're not. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. But the cards, thank you for that. Thank you for that. There are some cards we had on Arthur Brooks on the podcast, and we said to him, so what's up with America? Why are we so angry? And he said, America doesn't have an anger problem. We have a contempt problem. Anger is you and I can be mad at each other, but we're still family. We're still colleagues. Contempt is I'm mad at you and I'm not speaking to you anymore as a family member, and this university would be better off without you. This church would be better off without you. That's what he calls contempt. Now, why is this so important? Well, Daniel Goleman, a behavioral scientist, says this. There's a transfer of emotions that happen called emotional contagion. We catch feelings from one another as though they were some kind of virus. So I'm really leery to do this with some really, really smart people in the room, but I'm going to try anyway. You have the high and low road, right? The high road is what you process with, but it takes some thinking. The low road is working 24/7. It's picking up things. Like I'm even looking at some of you making judgments. That's my low road. Now my high road can step in and correct it. Make sense? But my low road is going 24/7. And I'm picking up your negativity. Now, the way we can say that in popular vernacular, I get a good vibe from you. I get a bad vibe from you. So as Christians, I always say this to my students, isn't it crazy that Jesus gave you a cheat sheet? I mean, if I said to my students, hey, there's a test coming up, your midterm, it's only on 2 of the most important things I've ever said in this whole semester. How would you feel about the test? Would you know the 2? And they're like, yeah. I go, okay, what's the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Awesome. The second is just like the first. What's the second? Love your neighbor as yourself, right? So if we don't love that person, now it's between us and the Lord. We're called to love our neighbors. Paul said, even your enemies, if they're hungry, I want you to feed them. So the very, very first step we do in the conversation is not with the other person. It can go really bad, that conversation. And I'd be very careful the words you utter. Some relationships never recover from what's said, the tone or the type of words. So the very first conversation is between me and the Lord. And I'm just saying, Lord, I don't like this church member. I don't. I'm sorry. I know I'm supposed to love them. I don't. I kind of wish they weren't part of this church. I wish this person was in my department. That's how I feel. I love what C.S. Lewis says. Don't pray what should be in you. Pray what's in you. So I think it's good to confess that to the Lord, but we can't stay in that place. So the whole thing, Scott, that you mentioned, the book, the edited book from Tyndale House is, okay, how do you identify what's in your heart? Second, how do you change it if you see that there's contempt, anger, resentment? And that's where spiritual formation, psychology comes in. And then last part is, okay, now how do I express my heart? If you go to our website, endthestalemate.com, you're going to listen to 2 really articulate Christians. One is going to say, there's no way you could vote for Trump. I'm sorry. You can't read your Bible and vote for Trump. There's no way you could do that. The other one's going to say, okay, is he rough around the edges? Yes, but look at his policies. Look at his policies. This isn't even a debate, right? Now, if that trips some of your buttons, That's awesome, because the very first thing you do before you get to the middle conversation is what just got stirred in your heart. When I mentioned critical race theory, when I mentioned trans rights, when I mentioned how to divvy up dwindling funds and still try to follow the second great commandment, once your button gets pushed, we have to address the fact that it got pushed, because you're not the only one who knows it got pushed. The other person does too. And that emotional contagion is in effect. I hope this is spurring like a ton of questions that you want to ask me later. This comes from John Gottman, one of the top marital researchers in the world. He said the first 30 seconds of a conversation, what, can we just go back to President Zelensky and President Trump just for a second? The first 30 seconds of a conversation sets the tone for the entire conversation. How you start this conversation will set a trajectory. So we really need to have wisdom what to do. We really need to know with this person, how is the best way to start this, right? And we have to think long and hard about that. What constitutes a soft startup? That could be saying how much I respect you, I respect your position, I respect what you've given to this church, I respect what you've given to this university, my department. We are going to disagree, but it'd be ludicrous of me not to recognize everything great that you've done. I've gotten into a bit of a public squabble with a really well-known female podcaster because of my view on preferred pronouns. I would, on occasion, use preferred pronouns. She believes it's a sin because of telling a falsehood, and that in fact, people that are in my camp should be rightly called heretics, right? Okay, my emotional contagion just went up, right? Just saying that, right? Imagine being in a conversation with her. Well, but listen, the woman is, I mean, she has done much in the Christian community. She's a convert. She's awesome in many ways. She's done some really, really good things. It's good for me to remind myself of that, because we really do disagree. And I disagree with her tone, right? Okay, so that's the first one. But let's not rush that. If you are not ready to have the conversation, do not have the conversation, because it might be, right? Remember what the book of Proverbs says? Words are like the thrust of a sword. A word spoken the wrong way can break a bone, the writers say. So be very careful what I'm about to say. And listen, oh my goodness, don't write books on conflict resolution. Don't write these books. The stupidest book I've ever written is I wrote a book on marriage. Don't ever write a book on marriage. Why? Your wife reads it. And she's like, we do chapter 10? I'm like, well, you know, broad strokes, we do. Chapter 10. We were at a marriage conference one time. We were walking out. We speak for family life marriage conferences. We're walking out to the parking lot and I take her hand and I said, hey, I'm really sorry. I do like half of everything I just said up there. And Noreen looked at me and she said, half? Trust, she was kidding. Okay, so that is the pre-work. Can't rush the pre-work. Now we get to the actual work, right? Proverbs 25, verse 11, like apples of gold and settings of silver is a word spoken in the right circumstances. We have to create those circumstances. Now, obviously, the writers did not know about communication climates. They didn't know about negative and positive spirals. They beautifully articulated them, but didn't know the theory behind them. But that would take a lot of time to go into. But I want to say, let's ask 4 questions as we're engaging this person. This is from my master's thesis, which is bringing together the gay and Christian communities in Chapel Hill. All my grad work is from UNC Chapel Hill, my master's and PhD. So I came up with this framework with the help of one of the top feminist theorists at UNC Chapel Hill. Question number 1, what does this person believe? Now, I might think I know what you believe, but I'm gonna let you restate that. Look at Proverbs 18. He who gives an answer before he hears, it is folly and shame to that person. I think we get the folly part. Oh my gosh, I did stand-up comedy in college, and I was on the debate team. How'd you like to have a disagreement with me? you're my wife, right? So I think I get the folly part. Noreen will start to say something. I'll just cut her off. I'll answer. And Noreen will say, that's not even what I meant. And I'm like, but if it was, that was a good response. Shame is interesting. Why do you think the ancient writer attaches shame to not listening? We get the folly part. I don't even know what you're saying, and I'm disagreeing with you. Why the shame part? Why do you think the writer adds that? How are we dishonoring? How? Yes, go ahead. Yes. Agency and complexity. Boy, I hated at UNC Chapel Hill when they found out I was conservative Christian and on staff with Crew. They thought they had me pegged from the get-go, and I hated that. Right? So to think I know your position, a complex position like critical race theory, and we think we have that wrapped up in a quick 2-3 sentences, that's disrespectful to the person. Now, to do this is difficult. To do it, you're going to have a spiritual process happening because your buttons are going to get pushed no matter what. If you ask them, okay, well, what do you think about President Trump? What do you think about Kamala Harris? What do you think about giving all this money to Zelensky? Right? My kids they're done. I have 3 boys. They're done. Hey, we're done. Billions, Dad. Billions. I'm like, okay. So as we have this conversation, you're going to get buttons pushed. So we have to do something called clear the mechanism. This is Shara's great book called The Love of the Game. Kevin Costner is playing against the hated Yankees. I am from Detroit, and the great thing is he's a Detroit Tiger. He's a Hall of Fame pitcher. Never pitched a no-hitter in his life. He's pitching his very first no-hitter in Yankee Stadium. He's told no one he's retiring at the end of this game. And watch how he has to clear the mechanism. Go ahead. Right, great. That's a spiritual process. Now, if I was speaking at a secular corporation, there's secular ways to do that, clear the mechanism. But we know that's breath prayer, right? When the ancient traditions of the church, when you say something that insults me, I just go, I got to clear the mechanism. We're one question in deep to the model. It's a 4-question model. We are one question in deep. And I'm all ready to co-opt this conversation and go right back at you like, what? I do what? I do that? I do that. You're saying, you are, see how it gets co-opted in a heartbeat? I need to let that person talk and not challenge because it's way too early to do that in the process. Now, what are you going to have to clear the mechanism on is different kinds of communication noise. We've studied these. The easiest one is environmental noise. That's if there'd be like, I don't know, the air conditioning going on, whatever. Physiological noise is for real. I mean, if you're is that how much time I have left? 16? Word, we gotta pick up the pace. But the last 2 are the most important. Semantic noise, that throws people over the edge, right? Critical race theory, white fragility, systematic racism. I mean, there's just certain phrases we in America today, quite frankly, lose it and get canceled pretty quick if you use certain phraseology. And then psychological noise, all the studies we've done on my side bias, we're in silos. We're not watching other news programs. We're not listening to other perspectives. We're pretty much siloed. Maybe as academics, that's rewarded. Maybe, I don't know, guys. It's not at Biola. We're not reading Michel Foucault. We're not, doing those kind of things. My son went to Harvard Law School. Do not expect help coming from Harvard Law School. They made it very clear we don't care about the conservative perspective. We don't want it here. You will get penalized if you share the conservative perspective. And my son would literally watch classmates get censored up front by professors who are like, yeah, we don't want to hear that stuff. We're about a progressive viewpoint. Question number 2, why does this person believe? Now, question number 1 is, what do you believe? Question number 2 is, but give me the backstory. Like, how did you arrive at this moment? How did you get to the place that you are this X, Y, and Z? I'm also working on another book on the deconversion thing that's happening. Pew Research, for everyone who converts to Christianity, 4 deconvert. We're seeing a massive hemorrhaging of young evangelicals. We've been meeting with individuals to get their backstory. Tell us how you arrived at this place, right? I love what Proverbs 16:25 says. There's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is a way of death. Don't inverse that. Don't start by saying, man, let me tell you how your political view leads to death. No, I need to know, why does this seem right to you? Right? And then I understand who's on your Mount Rushmore, who are the 4 most influential people when you're thinking about religion, politics, things like that. This is Steve Jobs, fascinating individual. No one could work with him. He was actually fired from his own company. But Jeff Goodall from Rolling Stones magazine did an interview with his friends. One friend made a very interesting comment. The central trauma of his life, after all, was being given up for adoption by his parents. And now he's being kicked out of his second family, Apple, the company he founded. A close friend once speculated to me that Steve's drive came from a deep desire to prove that his parents were wrong to give him up. A desire, in short, to be loved, or more precisely, a desire to prove that he was somebody worth loving. Okay, what difference does that make? He's still hard to work with, self-identified narcissist. What difference does that story make tomorrow when you got to go work with him? Does it make any difference? Okay, Molly, you said yes. Why? Yes. Good. By the way, I've agreed to go on a podcast with a guy who just wrote a book called The Sin of Empathy. Do you see how we're framing this today in the Christian culture? The sin of empathy. And I want to go, sometimes I wish I had hair just to pull it out. Okay, what we don't want to do is what feminist theorist Carol Gilligan says. We don't want to forget that every person has a life, a history. I want to hear your whole backstory. Tell me about the family you grew up in, the community, what was valued, what school you went to, what books do you read? Proverbs 20, verse 5, the purposes of a man's heart are deep waters. Our job is to surface them. Okay, makes sense? So number 1, I just want to listen. Starts a positive communication spiral. Tell me what you actually believe. I'm really going to try not to be offended. I think it's okay to say to somebody, but that one hurt. Like when you just said that, okay, that hurt, but I'm in it. I'm staying in it. I want to hear more what you had to say. Second, tell me why. Like, how did you leave the faith of your parent? Like, why did you decide to deconvert, right? Now, here's the one we don't do well at all. And I'll put the hook on Biola University. We do not do well finding common ground with people we disagree with. We've kind of lost that muscle. I love what Proverbs 15:14 says, the discerning heart seeks knowledge. I drill it into my students. Your first response is, where do we agree? The argument culture says we start with disagreement. We never really get to agreement. Okay, so I have them read some pretty wild books. Would it Barry Corey said to me? I said, I have tenure. He said, yeah, it just takes 2 days to fire you. Kind of I hope a joke. Okay. Here we have critical race theory. When I had my students read it, remember I teach a class, engaging diverse perspectives. I had an admin come up to me, a high admin said, what's this? I hear you're making students read a book on critical race theory. Yeah, I also have them read Nietzsche, Foucault. Yeah, first thing out of the gate. Now, parents are fine at a conservative religious school like the Bible Institute of Los Angeles, if we're reading critical race theory, to rip it to shreds. They would be fine with me assigning that book. But the first assignment is, where do you agree with critical race theory? Remember Aristotle's method of the dialectic. I can do both sides of the argument. This is John Hick. Can't study religion at secular universities without John Hick. Totally revamping how we think about the transcendent one. That's Dr. Lawrence Grossberg, UNC Chapel Hill, in the top cultural studies, postmodern thinkers. That is Michel Foucault. If you want to know what set the trajectory in the humanities, is Michel Foucault, a gay cultural critic of the 60s. He's utterly brilliant. He is the most quoted scholar of the last 100 years. He beats everybody: Einstein, Freud, Marx, Muehlhoff. He beats everybody, but nobody reads him. If you want to know who's on people's Mount Rushmore, but they can't articulate it, it's Michel Foucault. And my first job is to say to my students, where do you agree with Foucault? Listen, we're going to get to the disagreement, but first articulate where you agree. Oh, here's an assignment. This is kind of a fun assignment. We'll do it really quick. I have my students read this book by Michael Hart. He has enough chutzpah to rank the 100 most influential people in human history, starting from 100, going up to 1. I give him the top 10 list. Thank you. I give him the top 10 list, but it's scrambled. It's not his ordering. And I said, you order it. Who's on the list? Sue Lin, the creator of paper. If you're taking notes, let's give a nod to Sue Lin. Christopher Columbus, Buddha, Confucius, Jesus, Paul, Muhammad, Sir Isaac Newton. Okay, now we do a drum roll like David Letterman, and we get to the top 3. Top 3 left are Muhammad, Sir Isaac Newton, Jesus. Top 3. Now, remember, this is the Bible Institute of Los Angeles. Okay, and I say to them, all right, what do you think of the top 3? They're like, oh, come on. I mean, Jesus has to get 1. But if he doesn't get 1, Muhammad cannot get, and Sir Isaac Newton? Like, what in the world is he doing there? Okay, so then we do a drum roll. Number 3, Jesus. Number 2, Sir Isaac Newton. 3, Muhammad. Now, what's awesome is I just let my students go, right? They're all like, Jesus, how did God get bronze? You know, it's like kind of, and then I say, okay, wait, stop. What are we missing? Question number 2, why do you believe? And then we go read his introduction. It's brilliant. He says, listen, obviously all human history, 2 major impulses, religion, science. So listen, it's not going to be 2 top religion people, 2 top science. I'm going to split that too. Listen, religion's crazy important. In my top 10, 6 are religious figures. I'm not anti-religion. So well, why is Jesus 3rd? Well, because he wasn't a military leader. He wasn't a political leader. Remember, Newton gets 2nd because I told you I wasn't going to put 2 religion people or 2 science. And science is crazy important. Muhammad was a military leader. He was a religious leader. He was a political leader. Now all my students are like, one student, can I say this? I don't have a problem with that. I'm like, ooh, you liberal, right? But isn't that so good I want to know your thinking before I'm going to disagree with it, but I want to know how you got there. And that seemed pretty good. Now, there's obviously things we believe about Jesus I think would move him up the list, but let's have that conversation. By the way, here's what I say to my students right away. If you have lunch with Michael Hart, what's not going to cut it if you've not done it? You're not having a productive conversation with Michael Hart if you've not done it. What's the one thing you've had to have done? Read his book. We're so bad at this in conservative Christianity, right? We don't read critical race theory. We read critiques of critical race theory, Christian critiques. We don't go to Michel Foucault. We read a Christian critique of Foucault, which I think adds to my side bias. Oops. Okay, question number 4. Based on all I've learned, what is the one thing I should say? Not the 5 things I should say, but what's the one thing? I love what Proverbs 24, 3-4 says. By wisdom a house is built, by understanding it is established, and by knowledge the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. In Hebrew, knowledge is broad. Understanding is prioritizing of the knowledge, and then wisdom is the application of the knowledge. So I like to have this one little phrase with this person at this time, under these circumstances. What is the one thing I should say? If I know this person, we have a good working relationship, we disagree with each other, I think I can move quicker because we have a good communication climate. But if we don't have a good climate, I need to really slow things down. The rule of reciprocation. Why are the 4 the 4? I've had pastors challenge me on this a little bit. Why does my perspective come in at 4? Well, because you have to kick in the rule of reciprocation. Generally speaking, people will treat you the way you treat them. Listen, ask about their background, find common ground. I think that's a rule of reciprocation. Why is a babushka there? Because we lived in this former Soviet Union in a hostel with a woman who didn't like foreigners. I thought that was a bad career choice. I was like, why? We'd be a minute late to dinner. She'd lock the doors. And then one day we're going to play basketball in Moscow. And there's a German car stuck in the snow. I mean, if you want to know what a German car is like, take an American smart car, cut it in half, right? That's a German car. And the elderly man's trying to push it. He's getting nowhere. 4 of us walk up. We literally pick up the car, move it. The woman comes out of the hostile, and it's like she's yelling at us. I'm like, what is wrong with you, right? The next day, flowers in all of our rooms, and we could be an hour late to dinner, and she'd come out in her bathrobe, make us dinner. See, this is what Paul's saying. When your enemy's hungry, feed them, right? Feed them, and the Holy Spirit will put burning coals upon their head. Oh, man, I keep going in the wrong direction. My bad. All right, then finally, the post-conversation. None of this works. None of this goes anywhere until you step in to your in-group and you challenge norms. Like, I don't know, why is it we always say negative things about President Trump in this group? Why do we always say negative things about Kamala Harris? Why is it when we come to immigration, there's certain things we can say, but clearly certain things we can't say? Why is it in our group, it seems there are forbidden topics? Now, that's going to take a really special individual to have enough gravitas, or what Aristotle would call ethos, to do that. But we got to start challenging our in-groups, or this process goes nowhere. And we're all locked in our intellectual silos. I think we just got to find ways breaking out. So we just need to do it. I'll close with this story because I got a chance to knock something off my bucket list. So on our podcast, it was President Biden, President Trump. We literally flipped a coin. I got President Trump. My co-host got President Biden. Here's the next podcast, one that's sure to offend everybody. Only positives. The next podcast, only positives. We know the negatives. We don't need to rehash the negatives. Only positives. I had President Trump. President Trump does not drink because he watched his older brother drink himself to death. So when it comes to the opioid crisis, in his first administration, legitimately, he pumped millions and millions and millions into opioid addiction. The VA's been a mess forever. I don't know why we can't fix it. I train at a martial arts gym, and we have a lot of veterans. And I just walked up to him and said, "Listen, I'm not asking if you voted for President Trump, but in the first administration, was the VA better?" Every single one of them said it was better. I said, "Okay, awesome, positives." My co-host in the green room before the Democratic debate, he's sitting. President Biden sitting next to Pete Buttigieg. He's going through his rosary. Pete Buttigieg leans over and says, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm praying through my rosary. I just prayed for you." And by all accounts, President Biden shared his view of faith with Pete Buttigieg in the entire green room. Now, what did I get a chance to knock off my bucket list and to show you how strong that in-group can be? I got my very first death threat. I thought that was awesome. My wife was like, "Who are you?" I said, "Noreen, I have a black belt." She goes, "Against a bullet?" I go,